All right, good afternoon again, everybody. Today's session for our webinar is a high-level PEIMS overview. The purpose of today's session is to review the functionality of PEIMS, not document sharing collaboration portal. My bad, that wasn't updated. So we're going to be reviewing the PEIMS session of PEIMS information and go from there. And here's what the agenda for today looks like. We're going to first begin with a user level review of PEIMS, talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to move into the administrative level of PEIMS and review some of those highlights. Number 3 is a big one. We're going to talk about PEIMS validation, and then we'll end with the recap and next steps, including materials we might have in the Learning Center. Some of the items today, particularly number 2, the admin level review of PEIMS, are geared towards people that have administrative role permissions. But if you are an end user, the validation of PEIMS and the user review of PEIMS is very pertinent to you. Just be mindful, there are some pieces today that do require admin role permissions. So with that, I'm gonna hand things over to Tiffany and she's gonna begin, I think. Or is it still me?
It doesn't matter, I can do this.
Okay.
We're just gonna first, yeah, you can just click. So hi everybody, this is Tiffany. So yeah, I'm gonna be doing this part of it. So let's first just go through again a quick review of what is PEIMS. PEIMS stands for Public Education Information Management System. Click. And it's a way that the data elements are reported to TA each year. And then TA is going to take that information used for funding, accountability, and reporting and report that to the Department of Education, which I believe now takes us to our demo. Perfect. All right, I'm going to grab the screen from Joanne. And everyone should see eSTAR. So today's session is going to be a little bit of a blend, like Joanne was saying. We're going to just do a quick review of the PEIMS data entry piece. We did a webinar on that not too long ago, and that's available in the Learning Center. From that webinar, we kind of got the feeling, and from some of the tickets we've been getting, that there's just, you know, some PEIMS stuff that just needs to be put together. You know, we just have some gaps where administrators aren't quite sure what they're seeing on the screen, so it's really hard for them to help their users. So this is more geared to a little bit of the high-level overview, but I do want to take a minute to just revisit ARD forms and what your users are doing. So I'm going to go into special education, ARD forms. I'm just going to pick a student. Go ahead and pick Ashton. So all of the PEIMS data is collected throughout during the ARD process, and it all gets populated to this PEIMS data screen. So everything they fill out as they do every screen in the ARD that has a PEIMS element, it does populate this screen. This screen you can't do anything on, you can't make changes to, it's just a collection screen. But if you did want to make changes, you can click the entry screen arrow. That takes you to the screen that that element is on. And to find the element, they do stand out because they have this little piece of paper and a pencil is their signifier that that's a PEIMS element. Almost all PEIMS elements need to be completed, almost all. And there are 2 exceptions to that rule. First exception is in primary, secondary, and tertiary. Obviously, if you don't have a secondary or tertiary, you don't need to complete those. You can leave them blank. The other one that we get a lot of tickets on, that being that we're doing more of a high level, I wanted to bring up. So this may seem like just a mishmash of tips, but really we're just pulling it from all the questions that we get from y'all. So the other one we get a lot of questions on is RDSPD provider, regional day school deaf. This is located on 2 different screens. If you click the entry screen button, it does take you to the RDSPD supplement, okay, which you can fill it out here if you want. But more commonly, we all know that it's on the placement of services 1 screen. And that's going to be down here. Now, this is where it gets not tricky, but where you don't have to fill something out. So you do have to address regional day school deaf and interpreting services. A lot of people will leave these blank and then they get a validation error, which we'll look at, you know, towards the end of the webinar. And then they fill everything out, including RDSPD provider. If the answer to regional day school deaf is not enrolled, you don't need a provider. Okay, so that's the other element there. You can skip if they're not receiving services. It makes sense, but you know, if you're a new user or even just someone who doesn't do a lot of ARD, they, you know, your users may not remember that. They click here, they see an option, they just pick it thinking they're doing the right thing. So that is the other one that can be left blank, is your RDSPD provider. As long as they're not enrolled. You know, if they are enrolled, then you do need to have a provider. And we will talk about, when we get to the admin side, where these options come from, because that's another ticket we're getting a lot. How do I populate this drop down with my RDSPD providers? So we will look at that in a moment as well. So again, as your users fill out their ARD, all of their PEIMS elements will populate here. So, do we have any chat questions coming in? I don't see any yet, so that's good. So let's talk about validation, okay? Because again, this was reviewed in our data entry webinar, but again, it's really important to PEIMS to understand what you're doing. These errors are telling you there's an inconsistency somewhere in this information, the information right here on the screen. So you're not going to get any kind of error about anything else other than PEIMS, which seems to be a little confusing. Some people are thinking that it could have to do with other pieces of the ARD. No, these errors are just saying there's either something missing on this screen that needs to be there, or there's an inconsistency. Do we have any questions? I think I saw someone had an ECI question.
Yeah, we had a question about when the student is not in ECI, they get that error a lot.
Okay, that you're not saying no? Yeah, because you will get that error if you don't say that they are not in ECI. And you also have to check on a lot of these, the ones with the early childhood, and there is, oh, what is the other one? There's another one that has to do with their age, that your age is correct and your date of birth is correct and your start date is also agreeing with that. So here's a good example that brings ECI right into it for you, Lauren. So let's say that my student turns 3 years old on October 1st. Okay, they turned 3. So they would be, let's see, which one would they be? They would be coming out of, they would be in ECI, because that would be by their 3rd birthday. If your PEIMS date, it's also going to look at the PEIMS date. So if your PEIMS date is still before their 3rd birthday, you're going to get an error saying that their age doesn't match with the code you chose. And I think it's service location is really the one I'm thinking of. But if you get an error that says, hey, you've left ECI blank, you have to address it, even if it's a no. If you get the error that says that the code and the age don't match up, check the date you have here for the effective date. If that date is before their 3rd birthday, you're still going to get an error.
Do all the dates?
I see the question.
Sorry. Do all the dates on this page need to be the same?
No, they do not. So let's talk about dates, and like again, I know it's like a mishmash of info, but it's it's stuff you need to know. These dates can be handled however you want in the district. These dates, unless you have a PEIMS import-export set up with us, and in that case, you are trained a little bit more on what these dates need to be. And it's not even that they need to be anything. You just know what they need to do to match with your SIS system. So let's take that out of it. Let's just say you just use eSTAR. There's no PEIMS information flowing back and forth. These dates can be whatever you want. We don't use them. They don't print anywhere. What they can be is the date of the ARD, the most recent ARD. They could also be the date that you last changed it or added it. So again, you could have a kid come into special ed in 2018 and half of these still say 2018 because maybe they've been, speech for that long. So they've never updated those dates. It just shows year after year that there's still speech. Some districts decide to change this effective dates with every ARD meeting. That's okay too. You can do that as well. Even if it stays the same, they're updating the date. The third thing you might see in here are summer dates. And you can see that on my screen. I've got a ton of dates that say 7/8. When you do your beginning of year update, you have the choice to either change 3 of these elements, the three major ones, which is instructional setting, speech, and I want to say it's early childhood, to roll those over, because all of those have that next year option, and then you can leave the rest alone, or you can choose in your rollover to change all of your PEIMS effective dates. So if you have that same summer date running all the way down your screen, that means that your district administrator chose to update all PEIMS dates to the summer. Again, if you're not using a PEIMS import and export with us and you're just simply using eSTAR, that's fine. These can be that way forever. Or when I do the next art in November, I can change each one of these to November, whatever it is. So as far as what those dates have to be, there really is no answer to that. You can either have them be the date of the art, you can have them be the original date that these services were entered or changed, or you could have summer dates depending on how your administrator is running the rollover.
So Lauren is the one who asked that question, and she just kind of explained that they don't want to do something incorrect. It affects funding. If you have multiple districts, should you change the first day of the new year for each district? She has 5 districts.
Okay, so this all has to do with it really has less to do with eSTAR and more to do with your SIS. So if you have, and that's where funding comes into it, because what you have in eSTAR is your snapshot's not coming from eSTAR. Your snapshot is coming from your student information system in your district. So it really depends on that. I know for districts that use eSchool requires that these start dates be the first day of school, because that makes it easier for eSchool to then create the data for the snapshot and get the right funding date. If you're not integrating PEIMS back and forth with us at all, meaning there's no PEIMS file, your PEIMS clerk still updates whatever student information system you're using, these dates don't mean anything. It all has to do with what she's entering in your SIS. And that's really dependent on the SIS you're working with. We have plenty of districts that have dates in July here for years because they just do the rollover every year. It's not affecting their funding because, again, these dates don't go anywhere. They're not being used for the snapshot. Everything's coming out of your SIS, which is your information system.
If a child has more than 3 disabilities other than speech, will the child always show an error with the speech indicator code as speech and other services?
Absolutely, they will. So yeah, that is a great question. If they've got, 4 disabilities and the 4th one is speech, you're going to get a special warning error on the screen because it's not going to see speech in the first 3, but it is going to see a speech indicator code of speech and other services, or speech only, speech and other services. It will give you a special warning error that it doesn't match. That's okay. The special warning errors do not print a watermark on your document. It doesn't stop it from you making the draft active. It's really just pointing it out, saying, hey, just making sure you're aware. You said speech, but we don't see it, but we all know that it is okay for them to have a 4th disability, or 5th for that matter. And yes, you can archive with a special warning, yep.
Primary disability and PEIMS reportable have 2 different dates. Why is that?
All right, so it all depends. Again, this PEIMS reportable, if you have a nightly PEIMS import export with us, that's important. If you do not, and you do not send, we don't send you PEIMS information, which means, again, your PEIMS clerk is manually updating your student information system from eSTAR, PEIMS reportable means nothing. If you do have an import and export, the PEIMS reportable is just what date did you start including the student on the file, okay? So, I mean, in the event of you actually having an export, you could have 2 different dates, because you could start, again, like this one. We started reporting him in 2019, but maybe they had a disability change in 2020, which is why the date's different. That's okay. They're still being reported. But again, if you don't have a nightly user import for PEIMS, that you could put in any date you want. It doesn't matter because it doesn't do anything. Let's see, Lauren, we import from Skyward. So the first day you started serving the student. Lauren, I'm really not even, again, I'd have to know if your district has the import and export. I want to say I know your district. It's like on the tip of my tongue. I don't know so you only import. So you do have a PEIMS import. So yeah, then the PEIMS reportable field is important. Just to make sure that they are you have to have a 1 there to make sure that they're included on the file. I'm reading through the questions. We only import to eSPED, so it comes from Skyward to us, to you. Okay, this seems to be a little bit more on the individual district side. So after we're done, if you want to stay on, then you and I can go through this, because again, I have to know the district, and I know eSchool requires that. I don't know much. I don't know if Skyward does or what they're looking for. So yeah. All right, but these are good questions. You guys actually crossed a whole bunch off of my list already that I was going to go through. That 4th disability being speech, you know, the date's not, you know, your PEIMS reportable versus primary. So you guys actually really did already get through some stuff. Let's continue with the validation talk, though. Everyone gets real scared when they click the PEIMS errors and they get this, there we go, and they get this box. Don't be afraid of this box. This box does tell you everything you need to know on what's wrong with the student. Sometimes people will send screenshots of this box and say, I don't know what's going on. Don't worry. Just if you read, it does tell you. It's a little bit, you know, sometimes it could be a little bit more, you know, less, you know, static, but, you know, it is telling you what you need. So in this case, I got 5 things wrong with this file. The first one, the speech indicator fields must include a setting, which is a start date and text fields. They cannot be blank. All right, so first one is speech. It's telling me that I need a speech code. It's blank. I'm going to go to entry screen. I'm going to come down to speech. See, it's blank. And edit some speech. Let's say they've got speech and other services. And we'll just say it was June 3rd. Now when I return, I'm going to be down 1 error. Now I'm only going to have 4. Now sometimes you try to fix an error and you end up with more. And you're like, what happened? So let's just say, I say that the speech indicator for this student is actually no speech. And I click save. When I return, now all of a sudden, I still have I do have speech on here. I still have 4, but now I have another issue, is that I already said they did not have speech, but here's speech. So again, it's looking for consistency. So if I say there's no speech, but there is here, I'm still going to get another error saying, hey, you've got a problem. Kelly, I'll handle your question in just a second, because that's going to change our direction. So clicking on this, other things, the assistive technology indicator field must have a start and end date, or I'm sorry, start date and text. The grade field is empty. Related service entry must have a start and end date. These are all things that are right on the screen. You just got to scroll and find them. My related service entry doesn't have a start date. That's a problem. Go to my screen, edit, add a start date. And I mean, you should have a start and an end date. So we'll just, all right. So then we're going to save that. And then that's going to clear that error. So I just try to tell every user that, you know, writes in things like this to just, you know, take your time, read this box. It's going to tell you everything. Fatals have to be taken care of. Special warnings you can leave. That will not affect anything you're doing with the file. No watermark. You can archive and you can make drafts active. Any other questions? Oh, so yeah, any other questions on here before I go and look at art history? Question, can you walk us through the error message primary disability date is before the first PEIMS reportable date? So that probably means you have a back and forth with us, okay, that you do have an import export with us. So that means that, yeah, you can have a primary disability date before the reportable date. Okay, so if that's really just the answer to the question. I can't have a primary disability date that's 10/1 and then have a PEIMS reportable date of 11/1. That doesn't, you can't have that. So you have to backdate this reportable date, which brings me perfect segue into where I was going. You cannot backdate PEIMS dates in an active file. It will not let you. So in the example I just gave where I need to backdate something to 10/1 from 11/1, I'm never going to be able to do it from an inactive file. I can do everything I want to do in a draft. You can go nuts. But if it's an active file, the system looks at it as a done ARD, a legal ARD. It's not going to let you change stuff, okay? So how do we do this? Well, most of your users can. They're going to have to come to an administrator. Most administrators, well, all administrators should have access to this PEIMS History ARD under Special Education. This is where you can change dates however you want, okay, to be whatever you want them to be. So if I have to backdate something for any reason, it could be, that PEIMS reportable issue, or maybe simply you're keeping all of your PEIMS dates, the date of the ARD, and the parent changes the date and they want to do it 2 days before. This is where you can update and backdate PEIMS dates. So Special Education, PEIMS History ARD, you may or may not have this application. If you're a teacher or a diag, you may not have this. It may just be what you may have to go to your administrator for it. So I'm going to go into my student, and this is really just one big PEIMS application. It just takes you to every single item. So if I wanted to backdate my PEIMS reportable date so I can clear that error, I can do that right here. And again, I'm just making stuff up. So this does not stop you from, you won't get that error message that says the date is before an existing history record and all that stuff. If you do it in here, you can do anything you want. So, and again, if you're a user, you're gonna have to go to your administrator because they have the access to this. You can delete lines, you can edit them, you can change them, whatever you'd like. So this is a really good tool as an administrator to be familiar with and not to be scared of. This just gives you full access to change PEIMS or even review PEIMS information without having to go to all the different screens. You can go through and then make your edits, all the way down the line if you need to edit anything. You can also validate PEIMS here. So sometimes when I get a ticket from a user that's having problems, I come in here and check the PEIMS. It doesn't matter. You can fix them here. You can fix them in ARD forms. Everything is bi-directional. So if you do it in one, it appears in the other. Kelly, and to answer your question, Kelly's question was, so if you have a transfer student from out of state and you create a file for the student and you had all of the PEIMS elements, do you add the IEP date and FIE and consolidation of important date screen so it counts for child count? You would need to have those dates on there in the consolidation of important date screen, I would think, especially for out of state, because they're not going to show up because it's not a transfer. I would put them there, yes, especially if it's initial. I mean, if you're talking initials, 100% they have to be there. If you're talking about this is like another annual, and they're coming in and you're just going to do an actual annual, those dates being there wouldn't really count towards I don't think they would be an issue for funding because you would already be addressing the child count funding here in this one. Okay, so I know we're over time, but I do want to take us through the admin side of it. So this one can get a little long, so bear with me. I'm going to try not to rush through it, but if you do have to drop off, this will be recorded and you'll be able to access it in the Learning Center. I do want to take us to an admin side now. I want to go into administration, special education, and we're going to look at the PEIMS preferences screen. Because this is a great screen and a lot of people don't even know it exists or they only use one part of it. I just want to explain it to you so you know what this screen does. So the first 4 checkboxes, and this is what it should look like. You should definitely have almost everything checked off on this screen. That is our best practice. But I want to tell you what these things mean. So the first 4, automated nightly processing. Almost every district, with the exception of maybe 2, send us a nightly demographic file of all of their student information, okay? Address, grade level, contacts, just the basics, okay? What these four do is it will actually adjust PEIMS location codes based on their age, which this was new maybe 4 years ago, maybe even 5. Before that, you had to go in when a student turned 6 and change your codes around, or you would get an error that it doesn't apply. So this actually, and again, that's why these 4 you should always have checked off. Let us do it for you. Let us adjust these codes based on their age. So it gives you one less thing to worry about. So those should always be checked. The next batch, auto-populate when first entering a primary disability. So this is a lot of stuff, and to me, it's a little hard to explain to you to make it make sense. So I'm going to show it to you. So if you have all of those checked off, what it does is it's going to pre-populate a bunch of PEIMS stuff for you to help you out. So as you can see in this case, I've got Erica. She doesn't have anything here yet. She has her PEIMS reportable date. That's it. I'm going to go ahead and now add a primary disability. So I'm going to go to her entry screen. I'm going to go ahead and add a primary disability. Let's just say she's speech. And we'll even just say October 1st. I'm going to click Save. Now, when I click Return, watch what happens. It not only filled out her primary disability, it also helped me out in a couple other places, okay? So this is just really helping you fill out some stuff. It's really just helping you pre-populate some things that we determine are pretty much known. Like, you know, early childhood intervention we have as a no. It's based on her age. Okay, so it's actually just filling some things out for you. Now, they could be wrong. I mean, let's say she is medically fragile. Let's say there are multiple disabilities. Let's say she does have interpreting services. You can change these, okay? It's just there to help you out. Let's knock out 5 more elements for you. Hopefully they're all close to correct. It's just there to help you. So that's what that does. That's what all of those checkboxes do. It will pre-populate a bunch more PEIMS items for you to just help. Again, you can change them. It doesn't mean they have to stay that way. You can absolutely change them. So that's what this whole section's about. Miscellaneous. So we've got a couple here. The first one, block activation of a draft record until all fatal errors are resolved. I'm begging you to have that checked all the time, because this will make your users fix their own errors and not leave it to you, okay? Make them do it, because they can't make that draft active until the errors are resolved. Display a watermark on the document if there are errors, and then you can change the text. I saw one the other day that I really loved. It just said fix errors, you know, like kind of like makes you think like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. Or you cannot have a watermark at text come out at all. That's fine. But this was really helpful for them when they try to print an ARD, so they can't just get around it by, okay, I won't make the draft active, I'll just print it. Well, even when they print it, it's going to tell them they have errors to fix. Next one, create a new service when editing related or service support. This is really up to you. So what this is talking about is when you're on the related services page, if you click edit on a service, you know, do you want to create a new line? Yes or no? Most districts don't have it checked. They don't want to have multiple lines of speech therapy or OT or anything every time they make an edit. Again, that's up to you though if you want to check it or not. That one, my best practice and what I've seen over the years, I wouldn't check it, but that's up to you. And again, not for any other reason than it just shows a lot on the screen and on the report, and eventually everybody gets annoyed by seeing so many things. But it wouldn't do any harm, obviously. Then you got enable nightly mid-year instructional settings rollover. So what is that talking about? That's talking about, actually, that is going to go, I lost my student. There we go. So on the placement of services screen, you actually have the ability to do a mid-year instructional setting change. I can find this. There we go. Okay. You have the ability to have this happen via your nightly upload, okay? So you can actually put that at some point you want them to change to a 40 mid-year and plug in an effective date here. Okay, and as long as you have that other box checked in PEIMS preferences, this will happen. So instead of like setting yourself a reminder that on 11/11, you know, this kid's going to go 40, I got to go back in, or whatever code you choose, the system will do it for you automatically. All right, so that's what that checkbox is all about in administration. It's allowing the nightly upload to match up with the effective date and make your changes. I know a lot of districts that I've seen use that, but sometimes they don't even know it's there. So maybe it's something that you can, you know, use in your district if it's something that you do. Enable PEIMS validations by categories. You want to see all categories of PEIMS errors. There are 4. There's things that are blank. There's eSTAR context edits, and that just means if you said their speech and speech isn't one of their disabilities, we're going to give you an error. Incomplete data. It's almost the same as blank setting. It means that there's nothing in a text field, whereas blank setting is there's nothing in a drop down. And then TEA, all the TEA PEIMS errors. You want to look for all of them. I would not change this. You want to see everything. Because even if you take out blank setting, eventually you're going to have to fill it out. Like, it won't show an error on your screen. But one day when you're going back and looking through this art and it's blank, you're just going to assume it's no, but I would leave them. Make sure that they're answering every question, yes or no. And then you've got enables PEIMS validation by SPED status. So what this means is, and you can select and all of them, only or except for. I typically do only, meaning I only want to see errors on kids that have a SPED status of currently served pending, or referral. Okay, I'm going to pull this one out because that's just for us. This is kind of what you want to see. You may not have currently served pending. You may just have currently served, but that's what we're looking for. What I don't want to see is something like withdrawn over here, because every withdrawn kid's going to have PEIMS errors, because you're probably going to terminate all their PEIMS. Any dismissed student is going to probably have PEIMS errors. You don't want to see all those. You know, you want to let those go through with blanks, because they should. You only are looking for errors on the kids that are active or in the referral status while they're prepping the art and whatnot. So know that if you do add something, we've gotten a ticket before where someone added a currently served dash pending or currently served dash behavioral school, and they're like, we're not seeing any PEIMS errors on those kids. You probably have to come in here and move whatever new one you created over so it will look now for those errors. Any questions on the admin level of PEIMS preferences? I know, Terry, you submitted a question. I'm going to get to that in just a second. But we have any questions on this before I go to Terry's questions? All right. So I do want to show, I did say before, the RDSPD provider screen is right here, where you would enter whoever your RDSPD providers are. Make sure you put their school code, because if you do not have a school code for RDSPD provider, it will give your user an error. It'll be a fatal PEIMS error. So just make sure you don't forget the school code. They have no way to type that in themselves. It all comes from this list. All right, so let's go through. We have one question I think left that I didn't get to. So what if a student transfers from one district to another within an SSA? Do the PEIMS dates need to change based on when the new student enrolled in the current district? They really wouldn't. I mean, it would still be considered a transfer from one org to another. Terry, I believe you're a switch org. I'm pretty sure. If you're a switch org, then no. I mean, it's one org to another. So you would handle it like anything else. Like, are you going to do a new annual? Are you going to do like an actual transfer ARD? And you would follow all of those same steps that you typically would. If you're not a switch org, and again, I don't remember off the top of my head, I want to say you are. If you're not a switch org and you just have one big account with many districts within it, then it's all the same. You're all the same school calendar. It's all the same thing. The PEIMS dates really have being changed. It's not going to be something you'll have to look into doing. Lori Hamers, do you have recorded webinars for ARDS and printing reports with all students? We have a bunch of recorded webinars. The most recent one we did on ARD types or IEP processes is in the Learning Center, I believe. And we do have a lot of documentation on printing reports, administrative reports, scheduling reports, student reports. So it really just going through that Learning Center, type in the word report. Admin report is going to get you the AU, FBA, and BIP stuff you're looking for. So administrative reports might be the best one, the keywords to use. Any other questions? I know we went over. I don't know if Joanne, you want to jump in, or I can show the Learning Center. It's totally fine. All right, so let me show you the Learning Center. Yep, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to log in as one of my real logins so we can see everything. So if you're trying to get to the Learning Center, we're going to log in. And I'm just going to pick one of my districts. And the Learning Center is up here in the top. You're going to click on the question mark and then Frontline Support. And that's going to open up the Learning Center for you. And here's where you would type in keywords. So videos and training, first we'll go here. Videos and training has all of our webinars we've done, anything recorded. So, you know, for reports, there's a couple. There's how to build reports. That's the export stuff. You've got mandated and scheduled reports, you know, and everything else is here. I even think our PEIMS one is in here as well that we did before. Or you can type in what you're looking for. So admin reports and see what it comes up with. So I've got administrative reports. And you saw there was some behavioral reports and PEIMS option. So it'll take you through, tell you how to do it. So that is going to be our Learning Center. I love using this. It's really intuitive rather than going through each one of the menus. That works too, but I like just typing in what I'm looking for, and I typically get it. No problem. Carmen, how do you fix student dismissal of service date before school excluding from export? I'm going to need a little bit more information on that one. I'm not sure what you're trying to do. So I'm assuming they're dismissed, but the date is before school. It shouldn't really matter. And I mean, if you're excluding them from the export, that's not going to play into it. So I'm not sure what kind of error you're getting. If you can give me some more info. So that's going to be our PEIMS overview. Again, I know it was like a lot of bits and pieces of information, but hopefully everyone got something new out of it. I know we went 40 minutes, but I think we got through a lot of good information. So if you need to drop off, please, thank you so much for sticking with us and listening through that. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send them to support. I'll stand for a couple minutes longer. I know that Carmen might be typing in some more stuff for me, or if anyone else has any other questions. But again, thank you all so much. Really appreciate your attendance today. Thank you. No problem, Sherry. Thank you. All right, Lauren. So here's my question. We do not export anything from eSPED each night. Okay. But eSPED does get a report from Skyward each night. Probably the nightly demographics. That's probably what you have with us, which has nothing to do with PEIMS. Nothing to do with PEIMS at all. So that doesn't play, nothing plays from PEIMS plays into that report. So it just goes skyward to eSPED. That's just that's going to be your demographics. Thanks, Gilda. I'm being Lauren. Okay, so after the art, you archive, then you give the PEIMS sheet to the campus. Yep. They put it in the Skyward. Yep, you got it. That is the process. If you don't have them nightly back and forth with us, exactly what you're doing is correct. You need to have someone at the district entering it into Skyward. You're good. You're good. Trina, if you can send that to the support queue, that'd be great. To see if A.W. Brown has nightly imports. I want to say off the top of my head, you don't. But if you could send that to support, then our tech team can look into that. They can see what you're doing in your district. All right, well, I don't see any other questions coming in. Again, anything you have that you think of, please send us support. We'd love to help. Use the Learning Center. Joanne is building that thing out as much as we can to get so much information there for you. Thank you. I know we went over. I hope this was helpful, and at least you took one new thing away from today. That would make my day. So thank you all so much. Have a good rest of your day. Bye. Oh, wait, Julia. Why do some PEIMS errors not show on page 4 of the ARD? Can you give me an example of something that's not showing that you think should be, except for dyslexia? Dyslexia errors we're still working on completing those validations, but other than that, everything. All right, for example, primary disability date before PEIMS reportable. If you do not have a nightly import-export of PEIMS, you're not going to get any of those errors because it doesn't matter. So if you don't have a PEIMS import-export, this can literally not be on your screen. It doesn't affect anything. Okay, so if you do import and export, then you will get an error if your PEIMS reportable is after your primary disability date. Right, you're going to see that on your admin report. Yes, that goes on your admin report, not here. That is correct. Because we don't want your users messing with those dates. So you're going to see that on your exception report for PEIMS. That is correct. That error does go there. Yeah. Carmen, the student was dismissed from services and now is currently served. The error report states the student dismissal of date. Yeah. All right, so this is, yeah, so you have a back and forth, obviously. The error report states that the student dismissal of services date before, the date is before school excluding from export. We're gonna have to look at that one. You're gonna have to send, can you send that to support? Let them know you have the PEIMS upload. That's gonna have to go to our tech services team because then they can look at that student, that situation, and give you a educated answer. So I would just write it up that, I have a PEIMS import. My error report is stating XYZ on this student, why, how to fix, and then we can look at that student themselves. No problem. Yeah, we got a whole team for that. And her name is Kathy. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I, again, appreciate everyone hanging in there with us. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.